We got some great stuff lined up for today, as we usually do. Oh, we have the wrong thing again? All right. Anyway, so first, we're going to dive back into some data. It's always a good thing to start with. And so I'm going to invite up the queen of data in this industry, the person we go to for all our stuff at TransWorld Business. Talk about sales, fails, and silver linings, the state of the industry. I'm going to invite Kelly Davis from SIA.
What's this? Oh, clicker. Awesome. That's a lot of things to hold. I have a lot of things to hold here. First of all, is anyone here from Solomon Bonfire? Anybody? Yeah, you guys won the golden ticket. Yeah, we did. Right on. Woohoo! That means she take off. $3,000 I'm out of here. Well, you know, we provide a lot of research, from retail data to sales and orders to consumer-based data from our Snow Sports Insiders panel. So $3,000 gets you a lot. I mean, we can do a lot with that. I'm looking forward to working with you guys on that. So congratulations, man. $3,000. Kick ass. Hey, is Jeff still here? Anybody? Oh, well, that's a little scary, but we'll leave that for now. As a nod to Jeff, you know, I think everybody that gets up here and puts a microphone up to their mouth has told a little bit of an inspirational story. Sorry, guys. And I kind of want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here and what my approach is. And it's a pretty personal story. Really, about 5 years before I started working for SIA, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Pretty much the same kind of cancer that Lance Armstrong had. Really fast-growing, you know, you go from healthy to dead really fast with this stuff. And I went through several surgeries and chemotherapy, and there were a few minutes there when, you know, wasn't sure it was gonna end well for me. Thought I was gonna break the family age curve. And during that time, you get a lot of perspective. You get a lot of time to think about, you know, what life is really all about and what you care about and what's important to you. And at the time, I was working for the government. And, geez, I could tell you what I did, but then I'd have to kill everybody in the room. It would be horrible. And I started to think about how I could marry my passion for the outdoors and for snow sports. And really, you know, I'm a triathlete. I do all of those things. And marry that with my passion for mathematics. Because really, I'm a theoretical mathematician. And right around that time when I was asking those questions, the job at SIA popped up. And so it was just a match made in heaven. I wrote David and Jimmy a letter and said, listen, man, I was born for this job. Bring me in one time, and I'll convince you. And he did. And so here I am 5 years later. And yeah, so that's why I'm here. And my approach has always been that, you know, this is about the industry. I mean, I want to provide you with the most objective, honest information I can so that you can make better business decisions, frankly. And we can figure out how to grow this business. I mean, there aren't enough people in snow sports. There just aren't. And I think that today I can present you not only with market data, because I've got to go over that. That's obligatory. But I'm going to present you some opportunities that I'm seeing on the horizon in terms of participation and some burgeoning trends that are sort of hilarious on one level and exploitable on another. So with that, I'll start. I'm not going to use a clicker. First of all, the market, you know, you heard from Dr. Phillips yesterday. I mean, the economy has sort of been in the same place since really 2009, early 2009. I mean, the bottom fell of the market in October 2008. And our market suffered that year because of the economy. It was a very, very difficult year. And since then, you know, we've kind of gotten used to what it means to us. And the nice thing about this economic downturn, and we talk a lot about unemployment in this particular economic downturn, most of the participants in the snow sports market have a college education. I mean, it's something like 85%. And the unemployment rate among those people is 4.4%. And I know that there are problems with the way they measure that, well aware of that, but you know, that beats the hell out of 8.5%. And it sure beats the 15% that you're suffering from if you don't have anything but a high school diploma. So our market has been less affected, actually, by this recession. I think to some extent it's like an injury that you just get used to having. You just kind of get used to the pain and you learn how to deal with it. I kind of think that's where our industry is with the market right now, or with this particular economic downturn. I think we've kind of gotten used to it. So, I mean, things are recovering slowly, but we had no snow. I mean, we had a really bad snow year. That's not news to anybody in this room. But if you want to know, just on a very basic level, how snow affects the market, look at Europe. Because Europe is predicted to be in recession for the next couple of years, but they had some snow, and their market's not suffering. They're doing okay. So, you know, I did a mathematical analysis 4 years ago on what really affects sales and participation in the snow sports market. And it turns out, and I don't know if any of you took basic statistics, but 3/4 of the variance on participation in sales is explained by weather. So if it snows, we're heroes. If it doesn't, we're in the situation we're in now. Other issues that we're going to have to deal with as the economy gets better, as things improve, as unemployment goes down, prices are going to increase. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, horrible inflation, but they're going to increase. I mean, right now, this year, well, actually in 2011, prices for food increased almost 5%. Prices for apparel increased almost 5%. You know, if we were rounding, it's 4.6%. And we know that gas is going to be $4 a gallon sooner or later. And that affects all the consumers, and it affects all of us. So those are things that we have to worry about. Other things we have to worry about, Asian production costs. And that's a serious worry. They're up 40% over the past 2 years. That's a serious, serious increase. And our producers are not making those margins back at retail. And they're selling in, and retailers can't raise their prices to match that, so, you know, we've got issues in production. In snow sports, we've got scarce snow. Right now, snowboard equipment sales August to January are down 7% in dollars, 11% in units. Snowboard apparel sales are down 14% in dollars and 15% in units. At snowboard retail, in-season sales, and we're talking about everything but carryover, those are down 4% in dollars, or 18 million, through January due to the lack of snow. So 18 million, you think, okay, you know, we may be able to absorb that if it keeps snowing for the rest of the season. That's something we may be able to absorb. It's still not good. It's actually really terrible. All right, let me show you what's going on category by channel. In the channels, I mean, specialty shops, and these are, I mean, we're not talking about chain stores. Chain stores are REI and Dick's and, you know, the big box stores. In specialty, we're at 152 million, down 11% in units, down 8% in dollars. And surprisingly, internet's up. We're at 53 million through January in internet sales. And that counts all the specialty shops that got smart and got commerce-enabled websites. So part of the reason that number's up is because there are a lot of small specialty shops that wised up and realized that, you know, the primary information source for most of our consumers is the internet. So they're on there and they're researching their equipment, they're researching their apparel, and they get the opportunity to buy, and those specialty shops are giving them the opportunity to click to buy. And then come in the shop and enjoy the benefits of service and expertise that only the specialty shops can offer. In chain stores, we're down 23% in units and down 21% in dollars. And part of that really is that chain stores decided they weren't going to sell so many hard goods anymore, which really isn't such a bad decision from an industry standpoint because they don't have the service. They don't have the expertise that specialty shops offer. One of the interesting things that's going on in chain stores, though, that I've noticed, I don't think they thought this would happen either. They stopped selling so much the hard goods. You know, they cut back on that. And what's happening is consumers are buying less apparel and soft goods in chain stores because they're buying their skis and their boards and their other equipment at specialty shops, and instead of going to the chain store to buy a jacket, they're buying it right in the specialty shop. They're buying their gloves, they're buying their goggles. So it's not necessarily a bad thing for the industry that chain stores are down that much. Okay, in categories, boards, 110 million in boards, down 9% in units, down 7% in dollars sold. Boots, down 12%, down 7% in dollars sold. And bindings, down 12%, down 8% in dollars sold. And in those cases, that's in-season equipment only. I decided to exclude carryover because it gives you a better idea of what's going on with equipment in general. Inventory units, this is a bad thing. This is where we're really suffering. Inventories are up 25% overall. So as of January 31st, ouch. I mean, that means specialty shops had a quarter more inventory than they had same time last season, which affects mid-season shipments. So if they're they're not reordering, got a lot of closeout coming up late in the season, they're going to cut prices. It's going to be a little bit ugly. Margins, although, are not down that much, only down 1%. And part of that is because of MAP agreements. Part of that is because they're not allowed to cut prices so much on in-season equipment until February-ish. So, when I get February data, that's probably going to increase a bit, or decrease rather, that number. It'll be down 3-4%. Sell-through, not a surprise, that's down 13% overall, down 11% in boards, down 11% in boots, down 17% in bindings. Ouch. Okay, this is regional. I mean, one thing I have to say about this regional view is I'm working on the West, because that's a real big region, and it doesn't really tell you a lot when we're looking at Colorado all the way west. And I'm not gonna bullshit you. That's a difficulty that I'm working with Leisure Trends on, and hopefully we'll break that down a little bit more in seasons to come. But Western specialty sales are at $54 million, down 4% in dollars, down 8% in units. In the Northeast, where the weather's been even worse, down 10% in dollars, down 15% in units. Yeah. Midwest specialty sales at $23 million, down 9% in dollars, down 8% in units. And down south, $23 million, down 14% in dollars, down 13% in units. So, I mean, it really does follow the weather. Sales really do. So what does this all mean? And just as a point, this picture, this is Mammoth in a good snow year. The first picture you saw was Mammoth this year. So orders in 2012, 2013, sorry about the 2012, they're going to be weak. I expect preseason orders to be down 20 to 30% in snowboard. They were up about 20% last season. So, we may take a little bit of a hit on preseason orders. If it snows, we'll see reorders, which is good. But right now, orders are not looking good. Early closeout sales are going to cut margins. And that means that Labor Day sales, where they're just trying to get rid of inventory that they had to carry over. With inventories up 25%, yeah, there's going to be a lot of carryover sale. There's going to be lower prices during Labor Day. Equal or lesser snow means big trouble. If we get decent snow, it'll stop the bleeding. We'll have a decent season, and maybe it's going to be a recovery season, frankly. If we get great snow, the reorders will be great. Everybody will be happy. We'll all be heroes, and I'll be here a year from today saying, yay, instead of this sucks. Stronger economy equals higher prices. That means better margins for retailers. That means that producers that are suffering from increased production costs are gonna be able to recover some of that money. That said, production costs are gonna rise again. And watch the economy in China. I mean, they're cutting their growth estimates, which may mean that some of that pain is gonna be mitigated. And that's good news. And in order to get I'm gonna get to the positive stuff, because I want to talk about participation. And I've stood up here before and said, you need to work on participation. You need to talk to females. You need to concentrate on what's going on with your participants. And I'm looking at participation data this year, and it's looking really good, actually, especially in park and pipe. And there are a lot of things going on in trends that will allow you to sell lifestyle products, like apparel and other products that surround the snowboard industry, but aren't necessarily used by participants only. I'm going to talk about participants for a minute. There are about 8.2 million snowboard participants. One thing I'm noticing about snowboard, it's got a bigger core than alpine ski, which is pretty amazing. It's about 2.8, where alpine ski is only 2 million. And you guys are participating more often. There are way more girls, and I'm talking under 18, going sideways these days. And the 18 to 25 category, taken off, which is awesome because those girls are getting ready to have kids in a lot of cases. And their kids are going to be snowboarders. Female snowboarders make new snowboarders. Nice production, right? And is there a war going on in the park? I read this article, and you guys probably know who wrote this. I forget his name, but it was, "Is freestyle skiing killing snowboarding?" Like it was this big war. And I'm going to talk about that a little because I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure that's bad for anybody. There's a lot going on in the terrain park these days. All right, let's talk about the core for a minute. And this is actually alpine ski core and snowboard core. And I want to show you basically what I'm seeing in terms of the core. In this case, this is 2009, 2010. This is snowboard. There are 2.7 or 2.8 rather million snowboard riders that are riding more than 9 times a year. Well, 9 times or more. That's what we consider core. I know it's not the greatest authentic measurement, but it's pretty decent. I mean, we're looking at the most frequent participants here. About 6.9 million go somewhere between 1 and 8 times a year. And another we're looking at about 2 million, actually, that just go once, and they're out. That's all they do. And those are, we're going to have that every year. Those are people that come and try it and then decide it's not for them. And that's okay. That number stays pretty stable. In fact, it grows. And out of every 10 of those, you end up with another core participant. So that's all good news. But in this case, looking at alpine ski core, only 23% of alpine skiers are actually core alpine skiers, are actually really frequent alpine skiers, as opposed to snowboard. What, 34%? That's huge. That means you have a much more dedicated group of participants, a much more authentic base than almost any other snow sport. That a little cheery slide for you, right? Okay, I want to talk about youth for a minute and diversity. Last year, if you remember, I don't know if you remember this conversation, participation just cut off right here. And I said, listen, the reason that's happening isn't because old people don't snowboard. It's because snowboard is a fairly young sport, and it's maturing. And I saw it. I knew I was going to see it in the numbers, and I love when this happens. Everybody turned 45. Yeah. So you get the pioneers of the sport, the first real mainstream participants turned 45 this year. Pretty cool, right? I did too, so maybe feel really good. But this is going to keep going. The nice thing about snowboard is how concentrated it is among the young. And that's always good. And the more young people you can get in your sport, the more you're going to grow on down the line when they're spending a ton of money on it. So that's really good news for snowboard. And more female riders. Female participation in snowboard between 08-09 and 09-10 increased 25%. That's amazing. And I ran a panel at the snow show. I don't know if any of you saw it. And Donna Carpenter was on it. Kira Malkamis was on it. And we were talking about what it means and why we think there are more female snowboarders these days, especially the young ones. And a lot of it had to do with product and attitude, that girls felt like they could be cute, have product and weren't very masculine. They could really be girls and be snowboarders. And we're watching that happen, and that's going to pick up. You get a critical mass of teenage girls. You guys have seen this, right? They run in packs, teenage girls. Anybody have teenage kids? Anybody? You've seen it. Right? They run in packs. So the more you can get doing something, the more you get. It's like a snowball effect. Teenage girls follow teenage girls, and teenage girls follow teenage boys. So it's always good to know that you're getting that critical mass in snowboard, where they used to think, well, it's not very feminine, so maybe I'll ski. You broke through that barrier. Congratulations. That's great news. And again, with the 25 to 34-year-old females, look at the growth. You went from 545,000 to 895,000 in one season. That's huge. And, it's something to think about when you think about marketing snowboard, that there are that many young female participants, and it's growing exponentially. I'll have a new participation data in about 3 weeks. I'm expecting to see that kind of growth again in that particular age group for women. Diversity. The terrain parks represent the most diverse section of the mountain. And this is a section of the mountain that's bringing in new participants that, basically are of different ethnic backgrounds than we're used to. I guess that's a politically correct way to go about saying that. But it's the freestyle skiing and snowboarding are the two most diverse sports on the mountain. And snowboarding, you notice, I want to show you what alpine skiing looks like. Alpine skiing is red. Snowboard is blue, and freestyle ski is green in this case. So these are white participants. So 71% of all alpine skiers are white or identify themselves as Caucasian. 64% of snowboarders and 53% of freestyle skiers. So what we're seeing in terms of the terrain park is huge growth in terms of ethnic background and in terms of the different types of, the different genders that are there and the different types of equipment they're using in the park. In fact, in the park, what I'm seeing in the data is that the terrain park is really the breeding ground for the new snow sports participant. And it's a pretty amazing place. And that means that there are new opportunities for growing participation by building more terrain park. And back in about 1979, there were 743 resorts in the United States. Now there are 400 and some odd. Maybe 445, I think was the last count. That means that a lot of the smaller resorts where people used to go to learn, remember where you paid $10 and you could just ride the little hill all day long, are closed. They're done. And to some extent, that's an issue of liability insurance. It's hard to make money doing that. But if you could take some of those little resorts, reopen them as terrain parks, we're talking about exponential growth in snow sports. And that's where the growth is coming from. So if we see opportunities to grow the sport by doing more of that, because we see growth happening in the terrain park, what an amazing opportunity that is. It's an amazing opportunity for snowboard. It's an amazing opportunity for snow sports in general. All right, this is my favorite subject these days. Look at these guys, right? Who are these guys? Well, I got turned on to this trend by a friend of mine who happens to be Vice President of Communications at the Discovery Channel. And, you know, I'm not proud. I'll steal research. I don't mind. You know, they've got a team of 100 researchers looking into this right now because they think about their programming and who their demographic is. And so we were out skiing one day, we're making turns, and I said, what's up with all the guys in the city that have full beards? What's up with that? I'm seeing it everywhere, especially the young men. They're full beards. I mean, what's going on? Why are they wearing flannel again? Did I miss something? And she said, no, you know, the interesting thing is we're looking really deeply into this trend. And they're calling it the urban lumberjack or the urban woodsman. And the funny thing about these guys is that most of them are ad execs, you know, stockbrokers. They're posers, in other words. But they're sporting full beards, and they're buying all kinds of flannel and skinny jeans, which is interesting. And they're buying LL Bean. I remember the duck shoes. They're buying things like that. But I look at them thinking, they're kind of stealing our look a little bit. I'm not really sure that we should be happy about this because it sort of erases the authenticity. And these guys aren't authentic. You know who these guys were 10 years ago? They were metrosexuals. I'm not kidding, man. These guys were wearing perfume and silk shirts 10 years ago. And I mean, this trend is sort of a backlash against the metrosexual trend, which is really interesting because what they're doing in their spare time now is instead of, you know, going shopping at Nordstrom's, they're taking riflery classes and they're taking meat curing classes and they're learning how to use an axe. And just to back this up with data, axe sales are up like 30%, by the way. I checked. And there's actually a custom axe store in Tribeca. In Tribeca. I mean, what is that about, right? And the reason I'm showing you this is because every once in a while in research, you get a golden moment where you're on the front of a trend, that you see it coming before it really takes hold. And this is going to take hold. It really is, and they're stealing your look. They're stealing your stuff. Make them pay for it. You can exploit this. You can. It's something that, you know, we had a tough season. And there are two things that you can do. And there are more than two things, because we can start talking about distribution and all kinds of business strategies to exploit this trend. But, you know, you can build product that these guys are going to latch onto. You absolutely can if you're in apparel, if you're in soft goods, and even hard goods. Because if we're really smart, what we're going to do is convince these guys that they should be snowboarders in order to be really manly, which they should be, frankly. But when you're at the front of a trend, you can exploit it. And this is one of those trends that you can exploit. And it's going to take hold, and it's funny. Like I said, it's a little bit hilarious. In fact, my best friend, who's one of the best researchers I know, said, you know, of the metrosexuals, I didn't really mind when men were pretending to be more feminine because they're clean and they smell good and they were nice to be around. But when men pretend to be men, I've got a problem with that. These guys are sort of in that category, but I wanted to turn you on to this trend because it's going to take off. And if you can think about ways to either exploit it or just completely turn against it and be more core, that's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. I just want to turn you on to this knowledge because it could be really valuable to you. Plus, it's funny. Okay, let's talk about ski versus board. I brought up the article where it was free skiing killing snowboarding. Well, is it war in the park, really? Or is it strained coexistence? Maybe sometimes. Or is it mutually beneficial coexistence? And when I say mutually beneficial coexistence, that means that free skiing builds snowboarding and snowboarding builds free skiing. And the way that can happen is this: 31% of the participants in snowboard are under 18. And what that means, how many people in here were born between the years 1965 and 1985? We're all Gen X, man. We're different. The kids, the millennials, totally different generation. They're not tribal. We're tribal. No, it's sideways or die. These kids are not tribal. They want to do everything. They want to put everything in their bag. They want to ride. They want to ski. They want to do it all. And it's a big, big difference. And when you think that 31% of your participants are in that generation, that's something to pay attention to. Because what I'm seeing is there are a lot of kids that ride that all of a sudden are saying, you know what? When I was 5 years old, I learned how to ski. So, I'm seeing a lot of skiing going on in the terrain park. Maybe I'll check that out. Maybe I'll buy a pair of twin tips and see how that goes. They're doing both. They're doing both. And so it isn't necessarily either snowboard or ski. These kids are doing both, and they can be mutually beneficial to each other. Because what we're talking about really is a culture in the park, not necessarily a snowboard culture and a free ski culture. We're seeing it both intermingle into one. And you can see that in the apparel, frankly. I mean, really, these two pictures, are they really wearing significantly different outfits? Are they really two significantly different tribes? Maybe not anymore. Something to think about. That said, you saw this yesterday. Dr. Phillips showed this. Really interesting, because the top line is ski and board sales both. And it's flat. And that's why I'm talking about terrain parks so much. Because that line has to start growing. We've got to grow that as an industry. The time has come for us to just say, F the tribes, we got to grow that top line number. And right now, you're seeing snowboard down a little bit and ski up a little bit. That was after last season. That's okay. We all need to think about moving that top line. And when I talk about terrain parks and building participation there, it benefits everybody. In terms of equipment, this is kind of interesting because this tells you what's going on with the millennials. That line represents the percentage of twin tips sold to snowboards. Really interesting season by season. Look at it down here in 2008, 2009, 43%. So that for every 10 snowboards sold, about 4 pairs of twin tip skis. This is projected, but it's going to be pretty close. This season, almost 80%. So for every 10 snowboards sold, 8 pairs of twin tips sold. I mean, it's not necessarily great news for this room, but it's something that you should know about because this has to do with what's going on in the terrain park. This is about what's going on in the park, and it's information that you need to pay attention to. All right, now for some more lighter stuff in terms of participation. I always look at crossover because you always want to know what your participants do when they're not snowboarding, right? Well, what's really interesting among snowboarders, the highest crossover activity is bowling. Right? Perfect activity, Rob. Awesome. 40% also play pool. I would guess that number's actually a little bit higher. 35% say that they also ride a road bike. That surprised me. I thought mountain bike was going to be higher. It's not. It's road bike. Pretty interesting. 34% alpine ski. So more of them say they ride a road bike than also ski. Interesting. And 33% say they play hoops. That's absolutely not hard to believe. And I look at these activities and I think, well, these are all things you can do when you're drinking beer, first of all. But this gives you an idea of what you can do in terms of cross-marketing. I mean, these people whom you sell product to are doing all of these things. So, these are ways to reach them. These are avenues to get to them when they're not on the slopes, and they're going to be wearing the same apparel and using, the same types of lifestyle products that they do when they're snowboarding. So skull candy, something to pay attention to, right? I just make them up. No, man, we do a participation study, and we do it in cooperation with the Sporting Goods Manufacturing Association, with the Outdoor Industries Association, well, the Outdoor Foundation, with golf, with tennis, with the calisthenics people, with the health club people. So we've got this huge group, and we call ourselves a Physical Activity Council. And actually, the nice thing about this group is that since we're a founding member, we have the annual meeting at SIA every year, which it gives us a little bit of a leg up in terms of, what kind of terms we can negotiate and things like that. But we do 40,000 individual interviews every year to get this data. So the margin of error is less than 1% on the overall numbers. Yeah. Well, I can get you that. I can get you crossover for 119 different sports. Yes. Yep. Yeah. I like to parse, man. It's my favorite hobby, parsing. But anytime you want more information, I've got this at a really granular level. I mean, I can tell you what the crossover is in the core for men. That I can get that granular. So if you want that information, it's valuable information. We put it out every year. Our members get it free. It's a participation study. Really easy to remember. The SIA participation study, if you need it and you're a member, I'll send it to you. State is a little tougher in terms of, I can't tell you what the crossover is state by state, but I can tell you what the participation rate is state by state, and I can tell you what total participation is state by state. So that's what I'm saying is I know how many participants reside in every state, and I know what participation per capita is in every state. So you can get the hot states, right? Okay. Because, it's always going to be New York and Texas and Florida because they have the biggest population. So you think, yeah, sure, Texas is number 2. Well, it kind of is because they have more people. It's that simple, but when you talk about per capita participation, it's Utah, right? Makes sense. Production trends, and I brought this up earlier, and I just wanted to show you this. In China right now, and this is 2011, up 22%. Vietnam up 12%, and India's up 15%. So wherever you're producing in Asia, your costs are going up. And if you're used to sourcing in China and then you produce in Bangladesh because it's cheaper, your costs are still going up. I mean, this is becoming more and more of a problem every year because our producers are losing margin, and since we're in an economic downturn, retailers can't raise prices, so we're all kind of losing on this, and it's something to pay attention to. And there are producers in this room that produce in our market, and if we get to a situation next year where a product becomes scarce, which we could end up in, then the producers in the U.S. market are going to have a bit of an advantage. And, this is a problem. This is something that we keep our eye on and something that I'm willing to talk about at length, not now because it's kind of boring, but something to pay attention to. All right, the weather. This is a picture of the snow depth on January 13th, 2012. Just want to show you this. Pretty bare. I mean, we all know it was pretty bare, and I want to compare that to same day 2011. I mean, this has been a huge problem, and we're still in a La Nina, which usually means a lot of snow, but we're missing an Arctic oscillation. We're missing a high pressure system over Greenland that we had that was holding cold air in the East Coast, and right now we've got something called a Madden-Julian oscillation that travels around the equator and basically just makes things very, very warm everywhere. And that usually lasts 30 to 60 days, and we're in that cycle right now. So it's just a bad weather year, man. And usually during a La Nina, things are better. And at the beginning of the season, Mike can tell you, it's like, yeah, La Nina again, right? Because usually we really get dumped on a La Nina, not this year. And I wanted to show you this, because when I think about weather, they've got 50 years of this data. This is the blue represents a La Nina period. The red represents an El Nino period, and this is neutral. So Mother Nature does provide us with patterns. And if I had to guess for next season, I'd guess neutral, which means we're not in an El Nino, so we're not going to get that pattern. We're not in a La Nina, we're not going to get that pattern. It should be a pretty average year. I mean, that's the way the pattern's looking right now. But, you know, I'll let you know in September what I'm seeing and really what NOAA's seeing, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That's where I get all my weather data. And let you know what the season might be looking like and give you that information as quickly as I can. Bad year, bad predictions, happens. Mother Nature, she's fickle. So, in conclusion, I mean, there are a lot of challenges on the horizon, including growing participation, including problems in production, and including weather, frankly. But all of these represent opportunities as well. And there are mainstream trends on the horizon that could represent huge opportunity for our industry. So I just want to say, as sort of difficult as it's been this season, it's really opened up opportunity for the entire industry, and I think particularly for snowboard. I always spend time examining the data for TransWorld, and so I'm gonna have to go through a couple of slides that are appendices. Basically, I'm just gonna flip through them, and they're August through December. But I want to give TransWorld a huge plug here, because this kind of data is what I see and what I send to Mike every single month I get data. And that was, you're going to get that on the key that you got with the golden ticket. You've got basically a research catalog. You've got a participation study. You've got an intelligence report. Didn't get the mid-season in? That's all right. I'll send it to you. But, I mean, Mike, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank TransWorld enough for how much you've done for me in terms of disseminating this data to the industry. And this month, man, I don't know if you published it yet. Sorry, I didn't check. But there's some really interesting stuff I sent. I gave him the 5 best sellers in each of the snowboard categories, from equipment to apparel. And what we found was something like 26% of the market share in each of those categories was taken up by the top 5 sellers in that category. And I said to Mike, man, it pays to be a winner. So when you're looking for data, when you're looking for snowboard data, you can always call SIA and you can see what we send to TransWorld every month. I'm really proud of that, and I just want to take the time to thank you for that. If you need data, you can contact SIA at any time. You can contact me, you can contact Dave Ray, who's sitting, Dave, where'd you go? There's Dave Ray right back there. He's a Western rep. That guy can get you whatever you need. We work together every day. Ed Ray, his brother. Oh, I haven't mentioned that. One of the products we also offer, if you're doing a sales presentation, what we do is we prepare sort of a state of the market every month. So whatever you need, and we do it in PowerPoint, you can just basically integrate that into whatever presentation you're doing. Or even better, we'll come and help you. We'll come and participate in your sales meeting. Just give us a call. Ed Ray is the Eastern rep. Reddy Kennedy is the Mountain rep. Give us a call anytime, no matter what you need. If you have a question about what's going on in the market, whether it's from the retail side, the supply side, or participation, or some other just, interesting idea that you have or interesting question you have about the data, give us a call. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer all of your questions about the market and give you the clearest view we possibly can about the snowboard market on a daily basis. So please give us a call. Again, if you want more data, see the appendices or see TransWorld. And with that, I just want to thank you. And this is a job I love, and I'm really happy to be here. And it's such a fun time of the year for me. And I thank Rob and Mike and Stephanie and everybody else and all of you for taking an hour to listen to me talk about data. Right on.
Thank you, Kelly. It was excellent. Always love looking at all the information. Very valuable. No offense to all the urban woodsmen out there in the audience. Looked like a photo of the TransWorld art department. Where'd you get that thing? It was terrible. Do you want a couple of questions? I'm pretty sure we might have a few. Obviously, if it's specific stuff, we can get that to you, but more than happy to take a few.
Is there a trend or a statistic, cheers, that you see a correlation with poor weather cycles and more people in the park or more park participants?
I'm going to have to look at participation data from this season compared to other seasons. We've been doing this particular participation study for about 4 seasons now, and I haven't had a really down weather year yet, so I haven't seen anything comparable. But once I get the participation data, which unfortunately is a year out, and I can explain that on a different venue. But I think my hypothesis would be, yes, we are going to see that. Where's Hugh? He was telling me on the way out here, he said, well, 60% of my business is done before the season even begins for kids that are gonna visit the terrain park on a very frequent basis. And I'm guessing that we're gonna see more and more of that. So, there are gonna be kids that could care less whether it snows or not, because we can make plenty of snow for the terrain park and it's still fun. So yes, and I'll let you know what the data says when I get it.
You mentioned in the beginning you were breaking down internet sales and specialty sales, and you said that a lot of the internet sales were specialty retailers with websites.
Right.
Do you have a way to look at that as specialty overall and see if specialty as a category is how it's trending?
Yeah, we're getting there. I mean, some of the internet retailers that we're looking at online are clicks only, like Backcountry. So I've actually asked Leisure Trends to parse it that way this season. So that would mean the 12-13 season, so that we could see that, because we're seeing so much of the online specialty sales in that number that I cannot figure out, if online sales are actually representing an increase in sales in the market or just an increase in web-enabled commerce at specialty shops. So we're working on that for 12-13.
I think Peter Derricks might have a question for the. I'm just kidding. No.
Hey, Jared.
Actually, I had a question about participation. One thing we talked about over the years was retention rates in snowboarding. We didn't really talk about that. I was a little concerned when I heard you say, well, yeah, there's 8 million people that try it once, and
No,
that's cool, but
that's not what I meant. It's like, what you have to do is you subtract basically the 6,800,000 that are, we call casual, that are somewhere between 2 and 8. And that leaves you with about 2 million that come every year, try it once, and are out. So when we talk about retention, Jared, it's like, we talk about bringing, 100 people to the mountain. We can only retrain something like, what was it, 17% was NSAA's number, was the retention rate overall.
has that gone up?
In snowboard, it appears that it has from the data.
The other thing that you didn't show, which I've looked at that participation study, and one of the things that was the most shocking to me was where people ride.
Yeah.
You put a big emphasis on terrain parks, but looking at actually the participation data, only about 14% of that number consider themselves terrain park riders. Actually, more people consider themselves backcountry riders than they did terrain park riders, which I think for the people in this room is probably a pretty interesting number. But you put a lot of emphasis on, hey, that's where we've got to look at the trends there, but the actual people riding, it seems like, is a pretty minimal amount overall.
And part of that is I'm not sure that I have 100% confidence in that number.
Well, yeah, when you talk about bowling as the #1 crossover sport, I think that's probably, there might be some skewed data.
Well, all you have to do is
who
go
you're talking
bowling
to.
once, man. You know that bowling. The thing is, bowling is a #1 activity for Americans. You know that 40% of Americans claim that they never even get up off the couch. I mean, that means they don't even go for a walk. And I'm not sure I believe that either, except that when I look around at the average American, maybe I can believe that. But I want to take some time and look at that trend a little bit more, Jared, because I'm not sure that asking them when we ask where they ride. Part of that question is, where do you ride primarily? So, we need to clean up that question a little bit.
To me, that's a really important one. I think
Yeah.
because everybody in this room puts a lot of focus on what those categories are. So
I'm working
that's
on it.
one that would be good. And I think van sales meetings contribute a lot to the bowling number. So I have to say.
Who here bowled last year? How many people in here bowled? I bowled last year. See? I'm just saying. All right. Yeah. What?
I guess I don't really. You're right here. I don't really need this, do I?
Yeah, but for them, yeah.
Well, it was more about Kelly and I. Have you seen any trends in terms of, over the last 10 years, how product has sold? And I mean, we all know December is a big month, but are you seeing a trend towards January taking over, November or anything there?
No, actually, the spike has always been right at the end of December. I mean, I know we touched on this yesterday. And in terms of when the consumer buys product, the majority of product in snow sports is sold in December. And part of that is, there's a lot of accessories and apparel going through for Christmas gifts or holiday gifts, whatever your religious tendency might be. But most of our sales, like 65% of our sales, happen between August 1st and December 31st. Yeah, and so it looks like what's going on is, you get your holiday sales, and then your core people are looking at equipment in January, February, March, right? And I'll show you the data on that, where you can look at in-season product, especially high-end. You see more of that going out in January, February, March, especially if it's a good snow year. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Phil. Okay, so I definitely love a good segue. And since we talked so much about participation, we're going to change up formats now. We're going to bring up our first panel of the day, which